Alrighty, fun. So, welcome back. So, I thought we could delve into this wonderful article by Mark A. Thiessen, who is an interesting character. He's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. He was is a Fox News contributor, columnist for the Washington Post, co-founder for Oval Office Writers, and was actually a speechwriter for President W. Bush. So that's kind of cool, I guess. But anyway, he did an interview with some people, and honestly, it's just really bad. He's with Daniel Pletka, who is, she's got like a history degree, I believe, but she's like a conservative commentator, as you can tell by some of the stuff she says. But yeah, it's just a lot of non sequiturs, really. But anyway, we'll dive into it. This is just a short article, so we'll try to read through it quickly. But yeah, 2021. So by now, most Americans have heard of critical race theory, but many do not know just how radical or pernicious CRT is. Because as a new study from the American Enterprise Institute shows, and I checked this out, by the way, it is literally just some statements, and I guess they do have a full report. I wonder if they're going to make me pay for it. Okay, 15 pages. Yeah, this would be interesting. CRT skepticism of how do they get these metrics? Percent of the total major newspaper CRT articles. CRT skepticism of rational thinking. Like, these metrics are so bad. CRT skepticism of liberalism. Universal values of objective knowledge. Anyway. Yeah, I don't even want to get into that. Well, alright. Just read this article here. If we want, we can jump into it some other time. I'll save it or whatever. So, from the American Enterprise Institute shows, the media does not explain its key tenets in its coverage. First off, if you're going to the media for something like this, which is an academic discipline, then I really question your research level. You should look to it from universities and not always the media. I mean, the media could give you information. I'm not saying that it can't, but it just seems silly to me. So anyway, I asked one of our nation's preeminent historians, Princeton University, Alton C. Guelzo, who's very conservative. I think he went to like a Bible college, but he did end up at Princeton, a professor at Princeton. But he thinks CRT is dangerous, and he's going to explain why. So, critical race theory, Guelzo says, is a subset of critical theory that began with Immanuel Kant in the 1790s, and I'm pretty sure this is not true at all. I mean, critical theory, I'm pretty sure, was established in the 20th century. I forget exactly when, like early to mid 20th century. Like everything I've found on it, virtually like everything I've found on it is. If you ask ChatGPT, it'll say that, and if you also go to when was critical theory developed? Can't type. Max Horkheimer first defined critical theory in his 1937 essay, The Traditional and Critical Theory. Maybe if I'm missing something or misunderstanding something, but I don't know where he, like, come on, man. Anyway, it was a response to and rejection of the principles of the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason on which American Republic was founded. Kant believed that the reason was inadequate. That reason was inadequate to give shape to our lives, and so he set about developing a theory of being critical of reason. Guelzo says. I'm just curious what ChatGPT says about this. So I'll just do like true or false statement. Let's see what he says. Statement provided does not accurately represent Kant's views. Kant did not believe that reason was inadequate to give a shape of lives, nor did he set out to develop a theory of being critical of reason. In fact, Immanuel Kant is known for his significant contribution to the field of philosophy through his critical philosophy, which, I don't know, sometimes this is wrong. Yeah, he believed that reason was a fundamental aspect of human cognition and that it played a crucial role in shaping our understanding of the world. Kant's work was focused on exploring the limits and possibilities of human reason. The critique of pure reason and the critique of practical reason. I mean, having a critical philosophy and saying that, I mean, how did he phrase it? It was, yeah, it began. Saying it began in the 1790s is just not true. So, anyway, yeah, like metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, aesthetics. So, anyway, that claim is sketchy at best. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that's kind of vague, but whatever. So, but the critique of reason ended up justifying ways of appealing to some very unreasonable things as explanations, things like race, nationality, class, he says. Critical theory thus helped spawn totalitarian ideas in the 20th century, such as Marxism and Nazism, which taught that all human relationships are relationships of power between an oppressor class and an oppressed class. For the Marxists, the bourgeoisie were the oppressors, or the bourgeoisie. For the Nazis, the Jews were the oppressors. And in today, 21st century America, critical race theory teaches that whites are the oppressors. I mean, like, okay. So, first off, I mean, this is generally how stuff can start, is when we tell ourselves that, this group of people is all the problem. Like, I understand that completely. Hence, Hitler's massively anti-Semitic establishments. But, I mean, if you think about it, the Germans did a ton of reparations for the Jews post World War II. A ton. Like, if you go to like Israel, right? Like in Israel, every like bus and taxi, it's a Mercedes Benz. Like there's reparations due to that extreme amount of oppression. Because think of it, like all those Jews were taken out of the work field. They were put into these slave camps. I mean, it's terrible. They were like, their businesses were hindered. They had to remove themselves from school and their kids from school. It is generational tragedy. I mean, like to come back from that is rough. Like they're going to need some sort of like resource intervention to help them get back on track. I mean, it's just ridiculous to say otherwise. And I guess that's all I'm saying here. Like for this, it was the whites that literally were the oppressors. Like you're just looking at this one way. All right. Anyway, before I get too bogged down on this, let's move on here. But yeah, it's silly to me. It's just like you can take anything and you can get it to look one way. Anyway, in CRT, all white people are instinctively white supremacists, Guelzo says. Adding, I say instinctively because this is not a function of reason. Oh boy. I would say subconsciously or instinctively works as well. But yeah, like a lot of people have biases towards things that are different. It's kind of when the trans movement came around, everybody's freaking out because it's so different to what you're used to. So this is why its advocates talk about systemic racism, a CRT term that has crept into our public discourse and has even been embraced by President Biden. Systemic sounds like systematic. Oh, jeez. Except, of course, that it isn't. Guelzo says when you try to find something that is systematic, then you have to go find evidence. No, when something is systematic, you use that system. So for science, you would use the system to find evidence. I mean, eugenics was also systematic. I mean, yeah. Anyway, but systemic implies something so deep and so instinctive that you're not even conscious of it. That there is an instinctive bias that is built into people of certain colors. No, there's an instinctive bias built into everybody. Okay, like that's just a misrepresentation of everything. It really, like everything so far has been. It's just there's an instinctive bias for everybody, but it happens to be that white people were the ones who had a really mean, oppressive structure against black people not that long ago. Like Jim Crow laws ended in 1968. So like they were enslaved. Do you think that they're going to be on equal footing with us in terms of opportunity? Like, hell no. Like, if you're a conservative, generally you're for equal opportunity. If you're not, then you should be totally against these ideas, because these are just help bringing people who are in less fortunate situations. Sorry, a race that's in, for the most part, is in a lot of less fortunate situations compared to white people, and bringing them up to par academically and entrepreneurially, economically, and whatnot. So CRT rejects democracy as a relic of Enlightenment reason. Guelzo says, here's that white people use tricks like democracy in search for truth to exploit and oppress and dominate people of color. Oh boy. That statement is so ass. Don't take his word for it. Delgado and Stefanik, authors of Critical Race Theory and Introduction, state that critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, enlightenment, rationalism, and neutral principles of constitutional laws. Holy shit. This is so bad. Because critical theory rejects reason, it cannot be questioned. See, it's just like one non sequitur to the next. And they're big ones, too. Like, if you took 5 seconds just to assess how this deductively follows, like, lay out a deductive argument for yourself and say, okay, like, what doesn't follow here? There's so much. Anyway, because it can't be questioned, under this rubric, Guelzo says the only purpose of questions is to serve the interest of the oppressive class. Any answer you come up with which doesn't speak in terms of some hidden structure of oppression can simply be dismissed as part of the structure of oppression. For example, if you believe, as Nazis did, that the Jews were responsible for all political and economic events, then my pointing out that the overwhelming majority of political leaders are not Jews merely shows that I am either a dupe of the Jews or that I am in on the fix. Oh boy. Similarly, if you question whether all white people are oppressors, the questioning itself an example of how you're in on the oppression. Oh, there's so much I want to say, but I guess for now it's just like, if you can't deductively show that this follows, then it seems to be like you're jumping to conclusions, which means you're making a non sequitur, which means that you are falsely conveying problems to the world that do not exist. And when you do that, you are fear-mongering, whether you know it or not. You are making people get up in arms about shit that is not a problem. Like, kids being shot up in schools is way more of a problem than this. Anyway. For advocates of CRT, the only solution to systemic depression is the inversion of color power. Guelzo explains. So, while most Americans oppose racial discrimination, critical race theory embraces it. Ibram X. Kendi, one of CRT's leading advocates, openly declares the only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to the past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. And now they're just taking their conclusion to the logical extreme, which is so unfounded. Oh my god. This is the opposite of what civil rights movements stood for. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. did not argue that America was systemically racist. He didn't, like, officially, but I mean, it's pretty obvious that it was systemically racist. I mean, like, they literally had segregated schools that were way worse for black kids. It's not hard to figure out. Like, that example alone is systemic. I mean, that doesn't have to do with anything else, like the criminal justice system or anything. I mean, just the social perception as well, the way they were treated. I mean, it's undisputable. I mean, gosh. So, so he argued that racism was un-American. It is. I mean, even though Americans really did it, but I mean, I think the idea is supposed to be that it's un-American. He appealed to the Enlightenment ideals contained in what he called our magnificent Declaration of Independence and Constitution, and declared his goal was to take the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the Founding Fathers. King argued Bull Connor, head of Birmingham police, and the Southern racists were violating the principles that America was founding, but critical race theory argues the opposite. Oh boy, that Connor was the fulfillment of America founding, because America was founded to perpetuate white supremacy. All right, I know, how long have I been going here? 14 minutes? All right, I gotta wrap up soon, but we've holy shit, it's so non-conclusive. It's CRT. I don't even think CRT argues anything about Connor. I mean, right? Like that doesn't seem like it's even part of it. I mean, unless there's some like little known idea that I never heard of. That's just like the what's his name, Bull Connor. CRT talk about Bull Connor. Oh, it does. Okay, maybe not. Okay, see, I'm wrong. In the context of examination of racial dynamics, systemic. Okay, Will Connor was a prominent figure during the American Civil Rights Movement and is often cited as an example of oppressive discriminatory practices that African Americans. Yeah, Will Connor's full name was public safety commissioner in Birmingham, Alabama during the 1960s. He was known for aggressive opposition to civil rights activists and his support for racial segregation. Connor ordered the use of violent tactics such as the police dogs, fire hoses against peaceful civil rights protesters. Okay, so he was a prick, basically. I mean, does it? I don't think it argues that he's a good person. Like, this statement here is what's wrong. So critical race theory argues the opposite, that Connor was the fulfillment of American founding. Yeah, I think it uses it more to like talk about like just how systemic oppression is involved. But I think I see what this. I think I'm just misunderstanding here. But sorry, non sequiturs were pissing me off earlier. So I believe they're actually just saying that Connor was the fulfillment of America because America was founded to perpetuate white supremacy. I mean, it kind of was if you look at like everything they did to the natives, and I mean, there's a ton of racism in our history. There's a lot, but I don't even know if it means that he's like the fulfillment. I mean, I think he's a product of just human nature, but yeah. Anyway, whatever. Why is this dangerous? As Richard M. Weaver famously said, ideas have consequences. Critical theory has led to the rise of ideologies that have killed millions. Okay. Oh, you mean, yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. Like the Marxism and the Nazism that you were claiming earlier. We paid severe prices at those moments when people have lost faith in reason and decided to defect to something else. Guelzo says, those are the moments when genocide rears its hideous head. By rejecting reason, he argues critical race theory could provoke a backlash that drives others into equal but opposite irrationality, such as genuine white supremacy. If your critical race theory is impervious to questioning and evidence, then fine. I mean, mine's... I mean, I don't know. I'm too willing to talk to anybody about critical race theory. And it too will be impervious to evidence and questioning, which at the point the only solution comes is violence. I mean, it just feels like a massive straw man when literally all that's being said is, okay, humans evolved evolutionarily and they have a natural proclivity to dislike change and difference. And so naturally, things like reason often are used to justify a particular course of actions, to say that it's just and efficacious. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, like, I'll talk about anybody about this. It seems to me generally like this would just result in someone be against this being racist, because if you say, oh, it's not the system, like I mean literally racist, but like if it's not the system, then what is it? Is it the black people? Because the black people seem to be doing a lot worse in all these different areas, whether it be culturally, economically, in a criminal justice situation, just every single example. So like if you're going to say, oh, it's just how people are sometimes, then you're saying, okay, well, then this group of people is naturally part of, or is naturally doing worse in all these areas because of how they are. And when you're saying the system, whether it be the cultural aspects of it or the criminal justice system or just anything, it seems really racist and bigoted to me, or just really ignorant. One of the two. Um, but I mean, there was that guy, Joe Rogan, who he was a black man, and he went into like this bar or something at this restaurant, and he was talking to a guy who was from the KKK, and basically this guy is like asking him questions because he never talked to a black person before, he'd never gotten to know one, and then that the black guy filled him in, but his whole perspective was like, oh, these people are just inferior, they're less intelligent, they commit more crime, they're a problem. I mean, that was just his perspective, and he thought he was totally rational for that, but it's not. It's just if you're using ignorance to justify something that's innately inherent in your biology, which is to dislike difference. And black people are different from us because we're white. And yeah, it's not hard. But it doesn't mean you have to do like white guilt or anything like that. Just like, I mean, just when we have someone in like Obama and maybe you don't like him for other reasons, but with regard to his investments in black schools and black businesses, I mean, it's useful to getting this group of people up on equal footing with white Americans for the most part. Not that every black person isn't on equal footing, or not that every white person is the richest person ever, but generally speaking, like we're talking in populations here. We're not talking in specifics. So anyway, with that said, this is why CRT is so dangerous and must never be used to indoctrinate America's children. So anyway, that's all for the day. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you. Bye.